We continue the shiur in Gemara. The Gemara says that the governor, Jewish governor, who was very strict, once asked Rav Sheshet. Rav Sheshet was one of the leading rabbis of the Gemara, only he was blind. He asked him, how come that I invite you to my mansion for meals? I want to do you a favor, and you always reject my offer. Why is that? Rav Sheshet answered, because your servants are not good. They are not trustworthy. They are suspect in committing the sin of Eved min hachai. Eved min hachai means an animal cannot be eaten until the animal is dead. The animal is alive, then it is taref. Same thing holds true. Of course, the animal must die only by means of shechita, kosher shechita. If it is not slaughtered kasher, naturally it is nevela. It's worse than taref. It's taref and it's tameh. But aside from that, there is also an isur of eved min hachai, an organ, a part of an animal that is not dead. It has that additional isur. This isur is so strict that it is one of the 7 mitzvot of the goyim. They are not allowed to eat part of an animal that is alive. To pull off a leg of an animal or anything, living thing, leg of a chicken, while it's still living, and living means when it's in the process of dying, but it's not dead yet. In that case, it is considered the isur, even min hachai. It cannot be eaten even by goyim. Rav Sheshet said, your servants are suspected of preparing meals with even min hachai. The meat they use was taken from a live animal, or an animal before it fully died. That's what they cook for a meal. The governor was shocked, and he said, who said so? How can you make a statement like that, which has never been proven, has never been dreamt of even, and especially of all people, you who are blind? How would you know whether they commit this type of sin? Rav Sheshet said, fine, let me sit at your table, accept your offer, and I will show you. Rav Sheshet had a student who served him. He said to the student silently, go steal one of the legs of the animal that's prepared for this meal. The student did this quietly. He wrapped this up, kept it near himself under the table. And then, when they brought the meat to the table, the Rav Sheshet said to the servants in front of the governor, I want you to bring to me the parts of the animal, the cut up parts, all the parts of it. They went and they brought 3 legs, because he had stolen one. So he said to them, is this an animal who had only 3 legs? What kind of an animal did you bring me? They were afraid, frightened. They went out and they cut off a leg of a live animal. They had nothing prepared. It was ready for cooking for a dead animal. They cut off a leg from a live animal and brought it. They put it down and they said, we misplaced it, here it is, here's the 4th leg. So he said to his servant, take out that leg you just stole. Took it out and put it on the table. Rav Sheshet said to them, that's some kind of an animal you have now, a 5-legged animal. So he said to the governor, you see that here's your proof. Your servants cannot be trusted. I've just proved it conclusively. Therefore, you cannot expect me to eat at your table. The governor was embarrassed. He excused him. Rav Sheshet left. And as he left, the servants conspired to eke out revenge against Rav Sheshet. They had a hole dug in the garden path on the way out. They placed some branches, straw, to cover this hole, and they said to Rav Sheshet, "We'll lead you out." Even if a person would see it, it would be difficult to detect it, but he could possibly detect this was a trap. Rav Sheshet couldn't see. There was no way of escaping. Behind Rav Sheshet, Rav Chisda was walking. As he came close to this trap, Rav Chisda coughed. Now, this cough was obviously a miracle from heaven. But the fact that the cough came just then, Rav Sheshet felt was a sign that something was wrong. Now, how do you find out? He said, let me test the way the Gemara says. You ask a child, tell me what posek you learned today. So you hear children walking there, they call over a child and say, what posek you learned today? The child said, I learned a posek, the Navi, which said, V'teilecha al yamincha or al shmalecha. Turn away, either to the right or to the left, not directly ahead. This was in the Navi, the stories by King David. So Sheshet said to his servant, look closely, observe, what do you see? He said, I see a straw mat laid out very neatly. So he said, well, in that case, then turn away, walk around it. There's something wrong here. When they left the grounds, Rav Chisda asked Rav Sheshet, how did you know that this was a trap? How could you have told? He said, in the first place, the fact that you coughed, which warned me that something is wrong, although you hadn't intended it as a warning, but it sort of alerted me. The cough sort of makes a person jump. He became very sharp and alert and sensed intuitively that there was danger. Of course, his intuition was through the assistance of heaven, Hashem. Secondly, the child said the pasuk. Thirdly, I'm constantly aware of the fact that you must suspect servants. They cannot be trusted. They are no good. Therefore, I was suspicious of something being wrong. That's how he escaped. Gemara says in Kohelet, King Solomon speaks about the fact that he had sarim v'sarot. He had many lords and ladies of the court. And he had sheda v'shedot. Sheda v'shedot, the Gemara asks, what are these things? Sharim v'shedot could be officers, could be also singers. Sharim are those who sing. Sheda v'shedot, that is possible, could be wagons, coaches for these officers. Could also be male shedim and female shedot, spirits, evil spirits. We know, even it says that Shlomo HaMelech was the greatest king of all time in power. He ruled over not just the entire world, the entire globe, but he also ruled over the upper world, meaning the world of the spirits. He ruled the king over the Shedim too. The Gemara says that to show proof of the fact that here it was also over the Shedim, the Shedot, but for what purpose? What did he need these Shedim for? What avail was this power? The Gemara says that he needed it in order to complete the building of the Bet HaMikdash. Shlomo HaMelech built the first Bet HaMikdash, and he had to have the assistance of the Shedim in order to complete it. Because the Gemara says that the certain parts of the Bet HaMikdash, like the Mizbeach, for example, had to be built of a block of stone that was very smooth, perfectly smooth, and yet it could not be sanded or cut in any manner with steel. with metal. Torah says you're not allowed to raise metal over the stones, because metal is a symbol of war, and this is the symbol of peace. If so, how was he able to cut these stones smoothly? The Gemara says he had to employ the use of the shamir, which Moshe Rabbeinu had brought to make these special stones for the Kohen Gadol's breastplate. In order to make those stones, that is to carve out the words on those stones, they had the words, the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. They had the names of the fathers of the Jews in order to contain all the 22 letters of the alphabet. These are the miracle stones they call the Urim v'Tumim. When they had to ask a question of heaven, they would ask, the Kohen Gadol would present the question, and the letters on the Urim v'Tumim would light up as an answer from heaven, reply to any big problem they had. So how did they cut these stones? How did they carve out the letters? They used the shamir too. No one knew. The shamir itself, what was the shamir that it had such power? Shamir itself was a worm, but it possessed such power that nothing could stand in its way. Nothing could withstand its power. If the shamir would walk on a rock or on a strongest metal, the rock would split, the metal would be cut in half. The shamir, a tiny worm walking on a mountain, could split the mountain in two. No matter what type of metal used, if it was platinum, the hardest type of metal, or in a diamond, it could split the diamond right through. The question, of course, is, if one had the shamir, how could he keep it? What would he put it in? If he put it on his hand, he'd have his hand split. If he put it into a box, the box would split. The ministers, they kept the shamir in sand, because you cannot split sand. That way, that's where it was kept safely. When they had the shamir, now the shamir was gone. No one knew where it was. And Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, needed it to build the stones of the Mizbeach, the altar, the parts of the Beit HaMikdash. How could he find that lost shamir? The Gemara says he asked his advisors, and they said, let's get the Shedim. Shedim is Shedot, because they would probably know. Since they rise up to heaven, Shedim have a power going up to heaven, coming back to earth, so they would know much more about it. So he caught two Shedim, and he used a compressor to press them both together, to the extent where he actually crushed them. This is like a form of Chinese torture. He compressed them so much that they were forced to admit. And they said, we cannot tell you where it is. We don't know. However, we would suggest that you ask the king of the Shedim, Ashmedai. So, he would know about it, but where can he be found? This is what information we had to get from them. So they said to Shlomo HaMelech that he could be found, located in a certain mountain. And that mountain, the question of course is, how do you catch him? A shed can fly. A shed can travel at amazing speeds, with the speed of an angel. A shed can travel to heaven and back. How do you capture a shed? Especially the king of the Shedim. So the Shedim told Shlomo HaMelech that Ashmedai, the king, would travel each day up to heaven to attend the yeshiva in heaven, to study Torah. Then he would come down to earth and review it on earth. The Shedim must eat like humans, must eat and drink. In this respect, they are different than angels. So on earth, he keeps water in a special pit that he has dug out on the side of the mountain. And in order to be sure that no one tampers with that water, that it is kept clear, he has the pit covered, solid cover, with a strong lock over it. If he finds that that lock has been tampered with, he knows that he will not touch that water. Someone has done something wrong to it, either poisoned it or exchanged it for something else that's harmful. The point is to get Ashmedai somehow at that part, at that place. This took the wisdom of Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon. He told his general, Benayahu, here's what you do. Take a collar, chain, like a leash, with the name of Hashem carved out on it, something that the Shedim fear, respect. Secondly, take a ring with the name of Hashem carved out on it that will make you immune to any harm by this shed, because they have supernatural powers. It will make you immune from any harm from this shed. Third, here's the plan. This pit is carved out on the side of the mountain. It's perfectly perpendicular, but the opening is on a slant. Now, you go to that pit, directly beneath the pit on that slant, dig a deep hole, and the hole should reach inside the mountain at the very bottom of that pit of water. Dig the hole into the bottom of the pit, and let all that water seep out, flow out of that pit into this new hole you dug below it. When all the water is out, then close up the hole in the bottom. Now, what remains now is an empty pit, an empty well in the side of the mountain, with nothing in it, with the top still covered and locked. Now, he said, after this, you go above, higher on the mountain, a point that's higher above the pit, dig deeply inside, a few feet into the mountain, in and then downwards, so that you can open a hole from there into the pit, without touching the cover of the pit on the outside. Pour wine through that hole. The wine will fill up the pit of the king of the Shedim. When that pit is filled, then close this hole up. What does it result in? Results in having removed the water from that pit, filled it with wine. Nobody has tampered with the lock. The king of the Shedim could not recognize that it had been changed for wine by anybody who tampered with it. So he did this, and he waited. He stayed there in hiding, and then he heard Ashmedai, the king of the Shedim, come. He tested the lock first very carefully, found that it hadn't been touched by anyone, and then he opened the pit, and he saw that it was wine instead of water. And the Ashmedai saw this. He said, only a fool drinks wine and gets drunk. However, how it got there, he didn't know. It must be through a miracle. Nobody could have put it in there. Nobody could remove water and replace it with wine by osmosis, by magic. So therefore he decided he will not trust it. He'll wait. Ashmedai waited and waited until he became very thirsty. He couldn't hold out anymore. And he drank it. He became very drowsy. And he fell asleep, as is the nature of the Shedim. Because Shedim too have that human trait in which they become sleepy. They have to sleep, and they have to eat. So he fell asleep. While he was asleep, the Nayahu, the general of Shlomo HaMelech, put the collar around him, this collar with Hashem's name, which now gave him the chain attached, now gave him power over him. He could lead him as he pleases, and he waited for him to wake up. Now first, let's analyze one point. The big problem here was to locate, to find the shamir, this special worm that had the powers of splitting rocks, to find its location. They had to go through so much trouble to get the Shedim, to torture them, to confess, to plan a way to capture the most dangerous creature ever, king of the Shedim, who had superhuman powers in destruction. This was a very dangerous mission, much worse, much more dangerous than capturing any kind of wild animal or anything in creation. Why couldn't they simply have applied to the Urim v'Tumim, the chest plate of the Kohen Gadol? That would give them an answer from heaven for a difficult question which they could not solve themselves. Ask the chest plate of the Kohen, where is the Shamir? Simple. The answer is, the Gemara says that the chest plate was made only to tell them, to reveal something of the future. These were the messages that came from heaven. The Jews wanted to know whether they would succeed certain items, like going to war. Would they be successful? Would they be victorious? That was a question for the chest plate to answer. If it came to anything in the present, any question, even if it was a question of halacha, Hebrew law, is a certain item permissible, or is it forbidden? Is a certain item kasher, or is it tarif? This the chest plate would not answer. And therefore they had to resort to wild schemes of getting the answer through his own wisdom. Now, as we said, Ashmedai the king woke up, and the general was standing there watching. As he woke up, he went into a fit of rage. He began to storm about, trying to escape from this collar. Of course, since the name of Hashem was on it, he couldn't. The Yahweh told him, the name of Hashem is upon you, stop battling that collar. He stopped battling it. Without the collar, of course, he would have had the power to destroy not just anyone around him, but even the entire world. Would be no problem for a shed, especially the king of the shed, to destroy. So he led him with this collar, with this chain, towards the palace of Shlomo HaMelech. On the way, the Ashmedai rubbed against a tree, and as he did, this is a large tree, giant-sized tree. The tree fell over on its side. It was uprooted and fell over. He rubbed against a house, and the house caved in. He came by a small hut that belonged to a woman, a widow. This poor widow came out, and she began to plead with Ashmedai to please spare her home, her hut. Ashmedai was overcome by her begging, please, and he was that close that he had to bend over sideways very quickly to avoid touching her hut. As he did, he moved a bone out of place, actually broke a bone by doing it. And he said, there's a pasuk in the Torah, that soft-spoken word is so soft, so mild, and seemingly so impotent, yet a soft-spoken word can break a bone. So powerful is it. Here we see proof. The soft word of this widow has caused a bone of the mighty Ashmedai king to be broken. Then they continued on their way. Ashmedai saw a blind man who was going off the right path, and he led him onto the right path. He saw a drunken person also going off the road where it was dangerous. He led him onto the road. He saw a happy occasion. People were singing and dancing. It was sort of a wedding ceremony. Everyone was happy. And he cried. When he heard a man saying to a shoemaker, "Make me a pair of shoes that shall last me 7 years." Ashmedai laughed at this. He saw a magician performing magic, sitting there and making up a brew, a witch's brew, and Ashmedai laughed. These actions were to be explained later. They got to the palace of Shlomo HaMelech. They kept him there in the waiting room for 3 days without bringing him in to see King Solomon. First day, he insisted, "Why doesn't the king summon me? He brought me in to see the king. Why doesn't he summon me to come before him?" They said to him, "The king has eaten too much. He's not feeling well." So he said to them, "Here, show the king this." He took 2 bricks, placed one on top of the other. Then he removed the top brick and put it over to his side. To show this to the king, he's a very wise person. He'll understand. They brought this message to the king. Shlomo said, what he's hinting at there is, take away the food from the king. The person is sick, not feeling well. The best cure is to take away his food. Let him fast for a while. That will cure him internally. Second day, again he wasn't summoned. And he asked, "Why hasn't the king summoned me today?" They said, "Because he drank too much wine. He's not in condition." So he said to them, "Take this message to him." He placed 2 bricks side by side and took one and placed it on top of the other. He came to the king. He said, his message is that a person has drunk too much wine. The best cure is to drink a little bit more, and that would bring him back a little, that is, not to add to it, but to cure his hangover. The best thing is a little more wine. The third day, finally, he was summoned, taken before the king. And when he came before the king, he took a stick of 4 amot, 4 cubits, threw it in front of King Solomon. And he said to him, "Let me see now. Let me show you now. When a person dies, all he has out of this world is a grave that's just 4 cubits long. It's about 6 feet. That's all a person has left in this world. Now, you as King Solomon, you have conquered the whole world, not just 6 feet. You conquered the entire world. And you're not satisfied until you conquer me too. Is that what you want? The glory of conquering me in addition to the world?" Shlomo HaMelech answered, "I don't want anything from you. It's just that I must build the Bet HaMikdash, and I must have the shamir, the sworn. That's all I ask of you." Ashmedai answered, "This shamir was not given to me, this worm of heavenly power. It was given to the angel appointed over the seas. This angel has given it to a wild bird. This wild bird has sworn to the angel of the seas that he will keep this from falling into the wrong hands." What does the angel do with this shamir? What does the bird, this wild bird, do with the shamir? He brings it to a mountain where there is no civilization, nothing grows. He places it on the tip of the mountain. The top part of the mountain splits. Then he brings special type of seeds with which he seeds the ground under that split in the mountain, and there's vegetation that comes out of that and grows, and from this he lives. The question is now, that bird has the shamir. Where does the bird keep the shamir? If you catch the bird, how do you ever get the bird to talk? How do you get a bird to confess? Shlomo said to his general, "Go and carry out these instructions. Find the nest of this bird And then cover the top of the nest with white glass, very clear glass. When this bird comes, wants to enter the nest, make that glass very thick but clear, so thick that the bird cannot break it, but so clear it can be seen through, completely transparent. Now when the bird came to his nest, he saw the little ones in the nest, but he couldn't get to them. He could see them clearly, but the glass covered the little ones. The bird was forced to fly off and to bring the shamir, to place it on the glass in order to split this glass and get to his little birds. When he did this, Yaakov raised his voice to this bird, frightened the bird off for a moment. He grabbed the shamir and left with it. The bird saw this. The bird killed itself, committed suicide for the fact that it had broken its vow. It had sworn to the king of the sea, the angel of the seas, that it would never let this shamir out of its possession, would be a loyal watchman over this, watch it loyally, devotedly, and here it had gotten out of its possession. This bird committed suicide, and the shamir was brought to King Solomon, who now used it to complete the building of the Bet HaMikdash. Even says, meanwhile, Benayahu, the general, spoke to King Ashmedai. He asked him, please explain to me some of your previous actions. As we were coming to the palace, you saw this blind man straying from the road. Why did you help this blind man onto the road? This is not the way of a shed. Shedim are troublemakers. They don't try to help humans. The fact is that you knocked over a tree, you knocked over a home. That I can understand. That's your nature. Evil troublemakers. Here's a blind man. You should, with your nature, you should have enjoyed seeing this blind man go off the road and getting hurt. Ashmedai answered, definitely not. It happens that I was in heaven, and I heard in heaven it being announced that this blind man is a tzadik gamur, a complete tzadik. Anybody who does him a favor will be zocher to get Gan Eden. That's how great a tzadik he is. Knowing this, naturally, I went to help him. I asked, well, why did you help this? He asked him, why did you help this drunken person who was surely no tzaddik? Because drinking, to overindulging in drink, is certainly a sin. Especially Arizal says that a person should never drink any intoxicating beverages except on Purim. Even if a person goes to a wedding, he should not drink any whiskey or anything intoxicating. A little bit of wine for Kiddush on Shabbat, for holidays, and that's it. Nothing that's strength, no alcoholic beverages, except on the one day of Purim. Here's a person who was actually drunk. Why did you help him on the road? So he answered, I heard in heaven they announced that this person is a complete rasha. He might have done mitzvot at some time. This was to pay him back for those mitzvot, to save him from falling into a pit, hurting himself. I put him back on the road. Let him collect his reward for his mitzvot in that manner, and then he'll be ready for his complete Gehinnom. He asked, why is it when you saw this wedding, this simcha, you cried? He said, because I saw at this wedding, that the chatan, the kala, were so happy together. I know what's destined for them. Their fate is in heaven. This chatan is supposed to die within 30 days. He's destined to die in 30 days, making the kala of less than a month a widow. That's tragic enough. What's more tragic is the fact that she will not have any children yet. Therefore, she requires ibun or chalitza from the chatan's brother. Now, you cannot receive Yibum Chalitza until the brother is 13 years old. He has a brother who's only a child, which means that this Kala will have to wait nearly 13 years as a widow, bound where she cannot marry anyone else, to wait for 13 years until this child grows up old enough to give her chalitza. That's why I cried at the futility of these people making merry what they thought was a simcha. It was just a prelude to a double tragedy that was about to occur. So he asked, why, when you heard this man ordering a pair of shoes that would last him 7 years, why did you laugh? He said, I laughed at this fool. He's worried about 7 years. He doesn't even know if he's going to live 7 days. He wants shoes for 7 years. He said, why did you laugh when you saw this magician hatching this brew, performing his magic at that point as we passed him? He said, because this magician was working to find out what was doing under him, what treasure there was. He was sitting over the treasury of the king himself. He doesn't know that's the treasury that's filled with tremendous treasures. He's not aware of the fact that he thinks it's only an ordinary item. And his magic that he's using is not being used for the proper purpose. Plus, if he does succeed in finding out, his desire to get that treasure could easily lead to his downfall. Eventually he'd be caught if he tries to break into the king's treasury. That's why I left. So, Ashmedai, the king of the Shedim, was kept prisoner in the palace of Shlomo HaMelech till the Beit HaMikdash was completed. After it was completed, he was summoned before the king. Shlomo HaMelech asked him, there's a pasuk in the Chumash which says, To'afot re'em lo, speaking about the powers of the angels and the Shedim. So he asked Ashmedai the king, I could readily see the fact that the angels are greater than humans. That's understood. But as far as the Shedim, what is special about you? What powers do you have? I know that you have powers. You can visit heaven, you can fly. But what powers do you have? These are powers the angels have too. What powers do you have over the angels that you have over us and even over the angels? Anything at all? If not, then what's the chidush with you? You're not as good as angels. You have nothing over them, so why consider you at all? We speak about great powers, we speak of angels. Ashmedai the king said to Shlomo HaMelech, you want to find out what powers we have, remove this collar from my neck, give me your ring, and then I will show you my powers. Shlomo HaMelech was very curious. And curiosity, of course, is very dangerous, but he was always anxious to learn something new. He was willing to risk, not realizing that this was a very serious risk, to risk the results, consequences. So he moved the collar from Ashmedai, then surrendered his ring to Ashmedai, meaning he removed it from his finger. At that moment, Ashmedai rose up. He started to rise in stature. He grew taller and taller until she didn't have wings. One of his wings reached the sky. One touched the ground. This was an awesome spectacle. This is not just like a giant of 30 feet tall, or even like Og, the giant. This was an eerie spectacle, a very horrifying sight. At that moment, he said to Shlomo, you want to see what I can do to you? He picked him up, and he threw him a distance of 400 parasah, which is 1,600 miles away from his palace. 1,600 miles away, without any means of getting back. He was thrown in a manner where he had nothing with him. No money, no funds of any kind, nothing except his title, his name. And at that moment, too, one of the powers of a shedim is that the shed can convert himself, transform himself into anything he wishes. So he transformed himself into Shlomo HaMelech. He took over the throne and became King Solomon of the Jews. No one was any the wiser because he was identical to King Solomon. The same sound voice, the same looks, exactly. He sat on the throne and no one would know the difference. Meanwhile, Shlomo HaMelech, 1,600 miles away, started to walk back the direction he came from. He figured he would get help by asking people to help him as king. He told them he was king, they laughed at him. Wherever he went, they laughed. They refused to assist him. They refused to give him any means of transportation. And that's the pasuk in Kohelet. When Kohelet said, Ani Kohelet Hayiti Melech Al Yisrael B'Yerushalayim. I, Kohelet, was previously king of the Jews. I have lost my throne. And he said, all I have from all my struggles and all my work and all my gains is just my stick, my staff. Because he kept on going, and continually wherever he went, he claimed, I am Kohelet. I am Shlomo HaMelech. People mocked him, but word got back to the Sanhedrin and the chief rabbis who said, there's something strange about this person. Because it cannot be a person who is insane, a person whose sanity is affected, thinks himself as someone else. But he will not stick to a story, one single item. If he finds that he's not believed, he'll switch his story. He'll be someone else. This one is too insistent. He claims he is Shlomo HaMelech despite all the attempts to disprove him. And at least we should investigate. Perhaps something happened. Let's investigate. Especially since we know that Ashmedai, the king of the Shedim, was here. Where he is now, we don't know, but some foul play might have taken place in the palace. So they called on Benayahu, the general of Shlomo HaMelech. They asked him, tell us, have you been summoned at all by the king recently? And he answered, no, I have not. Now, they did not ask the other servants because they figured the other servants might have been summoned. They wouldn't know the difference. But Benayahu, if this was Ashmedai, the king of the Shedim, he would be afraid to summon Benayahu because Benayahu had this ring with Hashem's name on it. He wouldn't take that risk. It would be too much of a chance. So he said, I have not been summoned at all. They said, this is strange. Already there's something suspicious. They said, find out from the queen if there's any contact with King Solomon. And they asked, did the king summon you? The queen or queens, the wives of King Solomon, said, yes. Do you see anything strange about him? They said, no. Did you look at his feet? They said, we cannot look at his feet because he always wears socks. Now, a shed can transform himself into anything, but he cannot change the feet. The feet of a shed are webbed, like that of a chicken, scaled and webbed. That's why, in order to hide this, he kept the socks on continually, and they said this is definite proof. In that case, they said, go to confront him. From that moment on, Hashem the rabbis of the Sanhedrin brought Shlomo HaMelech. They gave him this special ring on which was carved the name of Hashem, this chain. And as he entered to the throne where Ashmedai was, he saw this ring with the name of Hashem. He rose up and he flew out and disappeared, never to come back again to him. Despite the fact that he had rid himself of Ashmedai, from that moment on, Shlomo HaMelech never had a real peaceful moment. He was always filled with fear of an attack by Ashmedai. That's why the pasuk says, "Hinei mitato shel Shlomo, shishim giborim savim la giborei Yisrael." He always had these giborim, these powerful guards around him to guard him against a possible attack. There's a machloket in the Gemara whether he ever got back to his original power. One rabbi says he returned to his power as king, but only as king of the lower, the human world. Never again did he rise up to his power that he had before over the upper world too. The other rabbi says that he was temporarily expelled as king. When he returned in full power. The lesson here is to show that if even Shlomo HaMelech was afraid of Shedim, how powerful they are, and how much a person should be careful of Shedim. What is meant by being careful of Shedim? The Menachem says to be careful not to chas v'shalom disbelieve in Shedim. The Gemara is filled with stories of Shedim. They are true, they existed, and they exist. This is one of the basic rules of Emunah. To believe that Shedim exist, though there are some high authorities among the Mefarashim, some of the rabbis of the past, who denied this, the Menachem says, chas v'shalom, to follow that denial. We believe implicitly the words of Torah that Shedim existed and do exist. We believe too that there is a power above them, and that Bezrat Hashem very shortly you will see this power come to play in the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash by Hashem himself, the coming of Mashiach, v'heira b'yameinu, amen v'yamen. We continue the Shi'ur in Gemara. The Gemara advises us about matters of health, how a person may maintain his health to the highest possible degree from a physical viewpoint. Of course, everything is biyad Hashem. A person's illnesses come only because it is destined, it is decided in heaven, except, of course, for a cold. A person catches a cold because he is a fool. He did not cover himself, or he did not take care to watch out for a draft. Other sicknesses are due to the acts of heaven. However, even then, it is possible for a person to become sick if he is careless, if he's negligent. He doesn't watch himself. That's called a pshi'ah, a deliberate act on his part, where he can become sick. The Gemara says, for example, the thing that is most common in causing internal illness is overeating. The Gemara says advice: that which you like very much, that food you like very much, you're tempted to eat a lot of, withdraw your hand. Don't reach out for that food, because the fact that you like it will make you eat more than you should, and most internal illnesses come because of overeating. The Rambam stresses this very much in his Sefer. Rambam says that if a person eats unhealthy food, but a little, he'll be healthier than a person who eats a lot of healthy food. And the Gemara says, another point, there are 3 items that cause a person to become weak physically, bring about a weakness, a general state of weakness to a person's body. first is fear. A person who is filled with apprehension, fear of something, an item, or a person. He's afraid of a certain person who might harm him, or he's afraid of certain developments in business, any type of fear whatsoever. This fear weakens the entire body, that's for sure. So a person should be careful to avoid this fear. Arizal says that this fear is a sign of lack of Yirat Shemayim. A person does not have enough fear of Hashem. Because he does not have enough Yirat Shemayim, Hashem sends upon him things to frighten him, to put him into a fear, to teach him a lesson. This is a reminder, just like a reminder of Teshuva, a lesson that here you have things that you are afraid of, earthly items, because you are lacking in fear of heaven. A person who has true fear of heaven fears no one. The Gemara says that he will not even fear a lion, because a lion should, by all right, be afraid of a human being. Pasuk in the Torah, Hashem said, your fear will be upon all the chayat haaretz, all the wild animals of the land. So that this is a rule that, of course, lions obey. The Gemara says, why does a lion attack a person? Because that lion sees with his eyes an animal. He attacks a person because he actually sees an animal. He would see a person in front of him, he would not attack him, he'd be afraid of him. So if a person acts like a person should, or he is superior to animals, but he has a true, deep fear of Hashem, then he would and should fear no one or anything. So that in ordinary cases, where a person doesn't have true Yirat Shemayim, he is then subjected to fear of other things, and this fear weakens a person physically. The second item that weakens a person is taking a long journey, whether it's by foot or even traveling. A long journey itself, though it may seem restful, a person's riding for a long time, he thinks he's resting, it actually saps his strength. So the advice here, of course, is that if possible, a person should break up this long journey into small bits. Travel for a while, rest up, and then continue on, to avoid weakening himself to a too great extent. Third item that weakens a person is sins. A person committing sins, this is taken out on him by weakening him. This item of sins, Tosafot says, consists of two parts. Sins weaken both a tzadik and a rasha. Both a tzadik who does not commit sins and a rasha who does. Tzadik is weakened because he is constantly worried. He is worried about not falling into a sin, whether it is b'mezid, which of course he would not do, or even b'shogeg. He might be trapped into committing something wrong unknowingly. This worry about fear of sins and the fear of the Yetzer Hara, this weakens him, and more so a rasha who commits a sin. The Zohar Kadosh says that the evil act of a rasha is what itself takes vengeance of a rasha. And of course this refers to the Satan, the Yetzer Hara, who induces a person to commit sins. The person thinks the Yetzer Hara is his friend. After all, he's following the Yetzer Hara's bidding in committing the sin. Instead, the same Yetzer Hara turns around, goes up to heaven, and acts as the Satan, the Mekaterig, to bring charges against this person, and then he is the one that is sent down to punish the person. So that the sin itself punishes the person from heaven. At the same time, the act itself, too, takes its vengeance against him physically. The act of a sin causes a person to become weak. The Gemara says there's one thing more that weakens a person even still more. Something which is habitual in many cases. People do not realize that this is something that is unhealthy. When a person eats, he should be certain to eat in a sitting position. To eat while standing is very unhealthy because this weakens a person physically, and his general physical strength, saps the strength. Also, it weakens him internally. So it is both a matter of derech, politeness, custom to eat sitting, plus the fact he will conserve his strength. The Gemara says there are a number of items too which are actually dangerous. They are so dangerous that the Gemara says, though there are many people who do this, who are accustomed to doing this, yet in fact these people in performing this act, this dangerous act, are practically committing suicide. Practically. Meaning that they are closer to death than to life. By doing this, they are more dead than alive. And of course, if they live, which people do, of course, though they commit these acts, still, at that point, should anything happen, anything drastic happen to them, they could much more easily die than any other person. The items are a person who eats, and at the end, when he finishes eating, the moment he finishes eating, he stands up immediately after eating. This can bring a person to a point of possible death. It is so dangerous. Therefore, the Shulchan Aruch gives us very vital advice how to avoid this. The person finishes eating. Do not stand up suddenly. Wait a while for the food to go down a little, to be digested slightly. How long should a person wait after eating and then be allowed to stand up? Shulchan Aruch says, very simply, we have the mitzvah of Birkat HaMazon, saying the Birkat HaMazon after eating. The length of time for a person to be allowed safely to stand up after eating is the length of time it takes to say Birkat HaMazon. At no time should a person take that risk of standing up immediately after eating. That's extremely dangerous. Same thing too, the Gemara says a person who sleeps, when he wakes up, if he wakes up suddenly and jumps out of bed, leaps out of bed, the moment he wakes up, that is so dangerous that at that moment he is more dead than alive. The slightest additional attack could actually kill him, chas v'shalom. The person wakes up, he should wait a few moments, it's a matter of seconds only, and then rise slowly, not too quickly. There is, of course, the mitzvah that is brought in very strong terms. The person, when he wakes up, should hurry with zirizut, speed, to rise up, to know that the day has begun. His neshama was returned to him, he should get up and serve Hashem. That speed of actually getting up means after the first few seconds of lying, resting, and then the first movement should be a slow one. Afterwards he should speed it up. But to open his eyes, get out of sleep, and jump out of bed, that's extremely risky and dangerous, hazardous. The Gemara says that there are certain items that are even more dangerous. A person who goes on a journey, this weakens him. If after coming back from this journey, he immediately gives blood, donates blood is drawn from him, and then he goes to a steam bath, and he drinks wine, and he lies on the ground. Another act, if he does it in this exact order, we don't have to go through the details, but the Gemara says this is a guaranteed way for a person to die immediately. If a person does this, he dies immediately. Now this, of course, is if a person wants to commit murder, chas v'shalom, he can simply advise someone. This is the crime, the perfect crime. Advise someone to do this, he can never get caught. Except that, of course, there is a witness in heaven. No person can ever commit a perfect crime and get away with it. Hashem says if the Sanhedrin can't get a person, the earthly judges cannot get a person, Hashem can. But what the Gemara speaks about here is a person to be careful, to watch himself very carefully, not to perform these acts which are dangerous. Some of them are mortally dangerous. The Gemara says there are certain items that are good, and at the same time they are bad. They have benefits, they have faults. What should a person do in this case? Since the fault, the harm, is a very big one, the gain, though, is also present. What should a person do? He should do this to a small extent, a small measure. If he does this a little, he'll have the gain without the harm. If he does it a lot, he'll have the harm and not the gain. These items are going out on a journey, taking a walk, for example. Walking very far is not healthy. Walking a short distance is healthy. Wealth. A person who possesses a lot of money, too much money, that person can find himself very deeply harmed because of the fact that too much wealth will bring him to ge'ava, conceit, which is the worst characteristic possible, the one that Hashem despises, Hashem does not tolerate. Too much wealth will bring a person to bitul Torah. He will be so occupied with his business ventures, he will not study Torah. A little bit of wealth is very good. It will not take away his time, will not give him that conceit, but it will give him the opportunity to serve Hashem properly, to give tzedakah, to take guests in his home, especially for Shabbat, and to be free without the worry of poverty, to be free to concentrate on Torah and mitzvot. The same thing applies to work. A person should work to a small degree. It's healthy. Overwork can cause harm. Physically, too much work too will take away his time from Torah and mitzvot. Wine, a little bit is good for the health. A lot can cause a lot of harm. Sleep is one item which, if he has a little, he'll remain alert and healthy. And, of course, he'll spend his time, he'll have that much more time to live. When a person is asleep, he is not really living. That's time literally wasted or taken away, subtracted from his life. A person is awake, that he is alive and can act, can perform, can accomplish, can do mitzvot. So therefore, too much sleep is very harmful, because it means that he is giving away of his life, giving away part of his life to the death side. If he sleeps little, he needs that sleep to sustain himself. At the same time, the gain is that he has that much more time to perform good. And that's why the Gemara says, too, that sleep is an item that sometimes a lot of it is very bad, and sometimes a lot of it is very good. This the Gemara says in Sanhedrin. Sleep is, a lot of it is very bad for tzadikim. Because if they sleep a lot, the world loses. When the tzadik does mitzvot, it protects the world. The zechut helps the people in the entire world. The sha'im, when they are awake, the world suffers because they commit crimes, they harm others, they harm themselves, they harm others, and their sins weigh down the scale of the entire world. When they are asleep, they are incapable of committing any sins or crimes, everyone gains by it. So we see that the only time that a lot of sleep is good is only for the sha'im. For a regular person, for a good person, too much sleep is very bad. There's one more item, warm, something that's too hot, whether to drink, something that's too hot, or to bathe in water that's too hot, is very bad and very harmful. Whereas, if it's warm to a tolerable degree, it's very healthy. It's certainly more healthy to drink warm drinks than very cold drinks, but it's healthier to bathe in warm water than in cold water. So it's very beneficial if it's a little bit hot. If it's very hot, it's very damaging. These are the items, the advice the Gemara gives to people to maintain their health to the best possible degree on their own. The rest, to really keep healthy and avoid sickness, this the Gemara says a person has to pray for, mitpalel to Hashem, he should be spared from any illnesses that come from heaven. The Gemara says, as we find many times, the generations, as we go along, become worse as far as ethics, morals, and religion is concerned. There are less tzadikim as we go along in each generation, and even those who are in the middle of the road become less good, less pure, less religious. Now this applied even at the time of the Gemara. The Gemara itself compares the former generations to the present generations of the Gemara, and this, we take this in ratio, relatively speaking, each generation gets worse. The Gemara says, for example, you're giving ma'aser of the crops, the wheat in the field. The farmer gathers the wheat and brings it into the warehouse. Now the ma'aser that goes to the Levi, because I'm not speaking about the ma'aser that goes to the poor, 10%. That, of course, is incumbent upon every person. There's initial ma'aser ishun, the first tenth goes to the Levi. But that ma'aser, the person is not responsible to give until the crops, the wheat, is carried into the warehouse. And even then, only if it comes through the door of the warehouse. Must go through the gate of the warehouse, then becomes responsible to have the maaser taken off from it. The Gemara says in the olden times, the former generations, they used to bring the fruit, the vegetables, the vegetation, crops through the gates in order to be able to perform the mitzvah of maaser. They were so happy about the zechut, being able to give maaser. Later generations, knowing about this law, have made skylights in the roof of this warehouse and carried it in over the roof through the skylight into the warehouse in order to avoid the chiyuv, responsibility of giving maaser. It is true that they are released from this mitzvah. They're not that bad that they refuse to give maaser when the maaser is obligatory. But they look for this loophole to try to avoid this mitzvah of maaser. That's how low they've stooped. Try to multiply that by who knows how many percentages from the time of the Gemara till today. We can imagine what today's generation is like, how they try to avoid this lot. But again, this is a warning that this refers to the majority of people. No person is forced to be of that majority. Each person can say, I want to carry out the mitzvot of the Torah to the strictest degree. That's the true Yirat Shamayim, true fear of Hashem, fear of the punishment of sins, fear of going against the will of Hashem, and the Ahava of Hashem, being able to serve Hashem, our King. In any mitzvah at all that comes up, a person should serve Hashem with simcha, the realization that he is zocheh to be able to serve Hashem. The Gemara says that there are certain items, speaking about the laws of divorce. There are certain cases that it is advisable for a husband to divorce his wife. There are some cases when it's compulsory. The wife, as Shalom, commits adultery, and of course he has no choice. He must divorce her. Whether he is a Kohen or a Yisrael, it makes no difference. A wife who commits adultery willfully must be divorced. If it is not willfully done, then the Kohen must divorce his wife, not the Yisrael. However, there are other cases too, where the Gemara says, though he is not forced to divorce her, it is advisable. Rabbi Meir says that if his wife acts loosely, openly in front of the public, the marketplace, in the street, very loosely, meaning in a manner that's not sedate, that's not refined, going out and eating in the middle of the street and walking in a manner that draws attention to herself, a manner that is not tzniut, then it is advisable to divorce her. Rabbi Akiva says that's too strict. At least she should be allowed the benefit of the doubt until we find that the public speaks about her openly in a very bad light. When she becomes the subject of conversation throughout, that she's acting not in accordance with the ways of a Jewish wife, then he is allowed to divorce her. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, you both are too strict. If we maintain these rules, then nobody, no woman, no daughter of Avraham Avinu, that means no Jewish woman, can remain with her husband. Every husband will have to, or practically everyone will have to divorce his wife. So therefore, we have to make certain allowances. And only in certain cases should one divorce his wife. In this case, of course, meaning where she actually breaks the strict laws of the Torah, then he is advised to divorce her, but not where her actions are borderline cases. Should not get to divorce at that point. Now the Gemara says, let's take this in a clearer perspective. Let's get the exact rule of divorce. The Torah says that a person marries a woman, she is his wife, and then Torah says if he finds something wrong with her, then he should divorce her. Now, something wrong, that word something wrong in the Torah is called ervat davar. Ervat davar, used as one term, yet the word ervat itself means zinut, adultery. Davar means anything, which means that we could take that meaning only adultery, an item of adultery, or anything which is bad. Adultery means something bad, so anything which is bad, like adultery, too, is a reason for divorce. Even as we have a three-way machloket, a debate on this rule. Bet Shammai say that no person may divorce his wife unless she has actually committed adultery. That's the only reason for divorce and nothing else. Bet Hillel say that there are other reasons for divorce too. Not only matters of religion. If she does not serve him right, it is the duty of a wife to serve her husband, to care about his meals. If she does not feed him properly, deliberately burns his meals, then that's reason enough for divorce. Rabbi Akiva says, even if he finds a wife who is better in all respects than his own wife, then he may divorce her, meaning more religious, more refined, and so on. Of course, the Shulchan Aruch says that the law does not remain like Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva himself undoubtedly said it, not as an actual insistence upon the carrying out a divorce. It was only advice that if this woman he marries does not have the right qualities that will lead to divorce, meaning that a person should seek a wife who is a true Eshet Chayil in the first place. Rabbi Akiva used himself as an example. The wife he married was one who was that pure, she was willing to have her material life sacrificed for the sake of a Talmid Chacham. So taking that to mind, Rabbi Akiva said each person should seek a wife who is that pure. However, the Shulchan Aruch says that the law is not even like Bet Hillel in this case. If a wife burns his food, he should not divorce her. the true reason for divorce, where it is legal for a person, legal in the sense that he has to divorce her, he should not seek excuses otherwise, is the case of adultery or something similar. Similar means if his wife deliberately breaks the major laws of the Torah, Chilul Shabbat, or deliberately tries to feed him tarif, or does not abide by the mitzvah of nidah, then it is a mitzvah to divorce her. Otherwise, a person should be very, very slow in reaching a point where he would divorce his wife. Other than those major items, a person should bend every effort for a reconciliation, try to speak to his wife, to improve her, to straighten out any difficulties that might lead her to doing things that are not beneficial to him, but anything other than divorce. Jimenez says Rabbi Meir tells us of examples of the types of men there are in relation to the wives, how they act with their wives. Meir said that there is a person, for example, who is that delicate that if a fly would fall into his cup, his food, then he would refuse to eat the entire food. He would throw away the fly, and he'd refuse to eat the food. The fly is not a filthy type of insect. It's not clean, of course, but it's something that would not contaminate the food by falling into it. It could be thrown away with nothing left of it, and not to have to waste a plate of food or a drink. A person who is that delicate, to this we compare Papus ben Yehuda. Delicate in the sense, particular, person that particular, case of a man who's married to a wife, and he is so particular about her, and so jealous, that when he leaves home, he first locks her in to make sure she does not go out, not to speak to any other man. This is so high a degree of jealousy that this can result in the very opposite reaction. As in his case, the Gemara says his wife committed zenut, and from this, of course, was born the unmentionable one. Second case, the Gemara says, in the case of a person who is that uncouth. Well, let's take first the middle of the road case. Regular person is one. When a fly falls into his cup or his food, he casts the fly aside and he finishes the meal. This is the case of a regular person who is particular about his wife, where she goes, whom she speaks to, but not in the sense that he will stop her and force her to refrain from speaking even to her own relatives. He does things with moderation. He gives his wife a degree of freedom just to see that it is legal, but he does not act with that insane jealousy. This is the way, the natural, normal way that a woman is to act. It's li'ut, not to speak to other men, but to her relatives or when they're together, she has the freedom to speak. Third case is the opposite extreme, a person who is that ill-bred that he eats that plate. This is the case of a person who is that evil that he allows his wife to go out dressed immodestly, openly in public, and to conduct herself with that pritsut, complete lack of modesty with other men. In this case, then a woman like that, who is that loose, falls into the category of Erevat Davet, that is close to the act of Zenut itself. And one who is that lax, the Torah says, if she retains that laxity, we're speaking, of course, not just speaking to other men, but acting loosely, and in her case, she should be divorced. It's a mitzvah for the Torah to divorce her. The Gemara says we have this inside the threat to divorce a wife. Note, the Gemara says a continuation of this pasuk. It says that a man divorces his wife because he found in her erevat davar, she had committed this grievous sin of adultery. The Yerushalmi beito, he sends her out of his home through the medium of divorce. She goes, becomes the wife of a different man. Now, note that it does not say ish sheni, the second man. It says ish acher, a different man. The Gemara says, meaning this is a man who is different from the first. The first one was pure. He had a risha'ah in his home, a female rasha. He cast her out. He got rid of her. The second man is different than himself. The second man is a rasha himself. He took this woman into his home. He accepted her as his wife. How different he is from the first. The Gemara says if the second one is zocher, if he is zocher, he becomes pure. The result will be, as the pasuk says after this, Usnei'ah ha'isha Aharon, if the second man will hate her, and the pasuk says that he will divorce her or he will die, she can never again go back to her first husband. The Gemara says, note, and this refers to this case. The second man, if he is zocher, he will divorce her, because he'll realize that he has a risha'ah in his home. If he is not zocher, he accepted this risha'ah, then he will die. These are the two possibilities. If he's zocher, he divorces her too, now he dies as a result of marrying this risha'ah. Even it says that the Navi tells us that one who divorces his wife is Saneh Shalach. And this means that the one who divorces his wife, he is hated. He has performed a despicable act. Another interpretation is that if she is despised by him, he cannot tolerate her for obvious reasons, sins she committed, then Shalach, divorce her, the command is to divorce her. Now, these two are not opposing opinions. They are two different cases. Even it says, if this is the second zivug, person lost his first wife, he married again, in that case, if she is disliked by him, get rid of her. Don't even try to reconcile the differences. But if this is the first wife, if this is the Eshet Ne'urim, first wife he ever married, and despised is he who divorces that first wife, his first zivug. Because one who divorces his first wife, even the Mizbeach, the altar, the Bet HaMikdash, sheds tears over this divorce. What has the Mizbeach got to do with a person divorcing his wife? Why should the Mizbeach of all things be the one to shed tears? It's tragic. This is true. It's his first zivug. It is his real zivug. This is the other half of his neshama. As the Zohar Kadosh says, a person, when he is born, he is actually born as one combination of two neshamot. When he is born, they are sent down separately to earth. And then he seeks his match, his actual zivug, which is the other half his neshama. Now, this is his first zivug. It is his own part, and if he divorces her, it's very tragic. But why should the Mizbeach be the one to cry over it? The answer is that the Mizbeach cries because of the pasuk in the Navi, where Hashem says that I have taken the Jews at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai, in the form of a marriage, of a chatan and a kala. The entire Shir HaShirim deals with this exchange of words. between the Chatan and the Kala, that means Hashem and the Jews, with the Torah being the marriage contract. In this case, Hashem says, this to Hashem, this is the first zivug. And when there is a first zivug, this should be a permanent one. Now, if a person shows that there is a possibility, chas v'shalom, of a separation, of a severance, separating a husband from his first zivug, this chas v'shalom could imply that the same thing can happen and happen too. Hashem should chas v'shalom send his people, the Jews, out into Galut, which means to drive them out of his home. Just as a man who drives his wife out by giving a get, a divorce, this would mean that too it could happen, chas v'shalom, Hashem would send the Jews out of his home, send them into Galut, and refuse them, give them an actual divorce. So because of this, the Mizbeach, the purpose of the Mizbeach is to bring a korban, sacrifice to Hashem. The Gemara says, what's the meaning of the word korban? Why is it called korban? Because the Mizbeach makes peace between the Jew and Hashem. The Jew committed a crime, a sin against Hashem. He brings a korban. This, again, brings out a good. He's found favorable in the eyes of Hashem. The word korban means the karev, to bring close the Jews to their Father in heaven, bring close the Jews to Hashem, and make peace again where there was a lack of peace. Now the Mizbeach sees that a person divorces his first wife, his first zivug. Mizbeach cries because this means that there can be this separation without the korban, without bringing the Jew close to Hashem. So therefore, a person should avoid, at all costs, ever divorcing his first zivug. Chas v'shalom, no matter how much friction there is, no matter how serious the difference is, no matter how much a person has to suffer even. The Arizal says that, of course, we're not speaking about the case of adultery or that type. We're talking about the case where a woman is that bad, for example, to her husband. The husband is that bad to a wife, where they disregard the other person's feelings. One hurts the other very badly. Still, the Arizal says that a person has a wife that is that bad, that nags and makes his life truly miserable, he still should not commit a crime against her by giving her a divorce. Because at worst, the worst meaning that the least he stands to gain is Gan Eden. A person who really has that bad a wife, then he never goes to Gehinnom. If that is true, that he has so bad a wife. Some men imagine their wives are that bad and don't really deserve this privilege. But if it is even true that she is that bad to him, then he still gains the fact that he never goes to Gehinnom. But in any event, nothing should ever reach a point, reach that point, where a person would have to, chas v'shalom, resort to actual get. One who's that pure that he retains the shalom bayit, we can understand then why the Gemara says that where there is shalom in a home, the Shekhinah is present there too. Because this is what Hashem wants, shalom in a person's home. Where there is this shalom, Hashem says, I will not remove my presence, nor drive you away from me. So where there is ish v'isha, and in shalom b'neihem, there's peace between them, the Shekhinah too rests in that home. The blessings of Hashem are constantly present in that home. This teaches us, above all else, that at all times a person should see to it to be the one to maintain peace, harmony, and goodwill in his home, especially between husband and wife, because in true sense, the husband and wife represent Kudsha B'richu Ushchintei. We always say L'Shem Yichud, to bring about a Yichud, a union of Hashem and the Shekhinah, a complete the letters of Hashem's name, by the husband and wife keeping the peace in their home. They are thereby being a yachid, being close, uniting, Kudsha B'richu Ushchintei, and above all else, that's a chut. This brings about to the Geulah Shlema, because then Hashem will bring the Jews back to Eretz Yisrael, We build the Bet HaMikdash. We're coming out Mashiach Zikenu V'Vehila B'Yameinu. Amen. V'Yamen.